Good afternoon, one and all. You're seeing, well, actually, I was going to say you're seeing an unfamiliar face. You're not seeing an unfamiliar face. He's been on the channel before, but before he was just one small square on a college of many, if you like. Today, I've got live, direct, and all to myself and to you. I'll share it in with you. It's Andy Byrne from Hammers United, and he is here to talk about what I consider to be the latest phase in what Hammers United are doing. Now, I think it's very, very important that we just talk about this issue. Now, we've had Tross on before, and I know you all love Tross, the bearded one, Brian Blessed. The viewers, the subscribers here, they love a bit of Tross. He gets a lot of love. They want to ditch me when he comes on. Get out of it, Gonzo. Get ZZ Top on again. That's what they seem to want. So anyway, we've discussed before about protests. We're not going to talk about the protests particularly today. We know that Hammers United want to get dialogue with the club. And why is the dialogue important? This is something we have discussed many, many times. It's vitally important, and that I believe this as well, that fans have a voice. Not just a voice, that fans have a voice on the board and something that they can hear. Something that the board always have to be held accountable. The FSA, the Football Supporters Association, are playing a part in this as well. And this is not something that is exclusive to West Ham. It seems that every other club I look at, the supporters have a voice and have a say. And that's all that we want at West Ham. And that is one of the big agendas that I know yourself, Andy, at Hammers United are forwarding. First of all, I've already said your name's Andy Byrne. You don't have to introduce yourself in that. Just tell everybody just quickly before we get on to the point we want to discuss. What do you do for Hammers United? What's your job there, mate? What's your role?
I'm a committee member at Hammers United. I've kind of fallen into doing a bit of the social media stuff, to be honest, and people might have seen me on a few different podcasts and a few different shows in the past, more by accident than by design. Kind of went on one and it spiraled from there. We haven't had a formal restructure of our committee for a while because we haven't had an AGM whilst we've been locked down, so to speak. But when the time does come and a formal restructure is put forward at the AGM, I may have an official job role, but at the minute I would describe myself as committee member.
Committee member, general dog's body, and social media. No, actually, I won't say the final word. But anyway, well, listen, you come across really well on camera, mate, as I've thought for quite a long time, and you're very, very welcome on this channel, I can tell you. What we're going to talk about today is Hammers United have a survey coming out. And where are we up to at the moment? 15,000 members, 16,000 members?
Over 17,000.
Oh, blimey.
Yeah.
I told you I've not spoken to Tross for a couple of weeks, you see. He's normally telling me I should have a precise figure. 17,000 West Ham fans. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment, mate. Before we get on to what we want to talk about, that's some responsibility, right?
It is, mate. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Cool. I mean, I never thought we'd be here, and I know Paul. I know Paul didn't when he started this out. He's he's a really humble guy, and he'll tell you, when it was just him and Lee chatting in a pub. This would have been in his wildest dreams. He would never have thought we'd got to this stage. And to be honest, mate, by signing up, by making yourself a member, you put us where we are today. I mean, there is no way in the world that we would have gone on the journey that we've gone on without people saying, yep, I support you, I'll sign up, I'll become a member. And essentially it's those numbers and that support that puts us in the position we are today.
With the I've got to be honest with you, I feel I spoke to Paul today. Paul is Bubbles, for those of you that and has been on a few times. You remember Paul did the wonderful video with Bill, of course. I feel terribly sorry for Paul because, in many respects, he's paid the ultimate sacrifice. He can't go to games. And if you listen to, we had a lovely spot of lunch as well when we went out for that day, and I had a lovely day. And speaking to him and getting to know him, it breaks his heart. You've only got to listen to that video and how much he is a part of the fabric of the West Ham, the following of West Ham, and going to games, and how much of a part of his life it's been. It is the ultimate sacrifice, but it wasn't a futile sacrifice. He has actually look at what has been built off the back of really a sort of an iconic image of him, of what he did then, of planting the flag in the ground. Fighting up Ginger Pele. A joke. But he's paid the ultimate price. But and that is a hell of a responsibility. As I say, you're doing this survey, I assume, and it's time for you to talk really now, mate, and tell us a lot about it. Is this about finding out? Just, you've got 17,000 members. Is this a case of saying, look, we want to represent you? What do you guys want? How are the questions? How are the questions sort of staged, and how's this going to go? And why do you want to do it, really?
Partly it is. And you alluded earlier to the fact that we've been working on a couple of fronts that we're not really going to discuss tonight, but they do tie in with that first question. And so, when we were first when we first convened, if you like, with the very first meeting in person, our members made it really clear, albeit there weren't many of them at that point, but they they made it really clear that step one, if you like, for us as a group was to try to get independent dialogue with the club. And what they meant by that specifically was do not join the official supporters board, which was the club construct that existed at the time. Now,
and just to be clear, sorry, I promise I won't spend the video interrupting you. I just want to make it really clear. It's important. Not the reason your members didn't want you to join the official supporters board was because the people on that committee were picked by the club. We wanted an independent supporters association, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And us as a group, we maintain that we obviously have got nothing against individuals that were on the official supporters board. Their motivation for joining the official supporters board was to help West Ham fans. The same motivation that we have and any independent supporters group does. The concern amongst our membership was that they felt that the board was too close to the club because it had been picked by the club, and so therefore the club had in that circumstance had an unfair influence over the board. And our members said, right, let's create something independent and bring it to the club. Essentially create it and invite them rather than have it created by them and be invited to it by them. And so really for what is getting on for now the best part of 2 years, that's what we've pushed for independent dialogue to exist. Now, without saying too much, because the groups that are involved have all committed to the fact that we won't divulge details of the new supporters board until it's finally agreed. Without saying too much, we're working with the FSA and with the other FSA affiliated groups, and we feel like we are getting close to a construct that the club will agree to engage with. And so I guess, if you like, in answer to your first question, if we're approaching a point in time where we will be in a position to hold some independent dialogue, we then need to know, what are we going to talk about once we've achieved that first aim? Of course, you've got the other one that everybody knows about that kind of sits alongside and continues no matter what, which is the protests and the calls for new ownership. But we believe we can do both. We believe we can run them in parallel. And so, yes, in answer to your first question, part of the survey is about trying to identify in the short term what are the types of things that we could help our members with in lieu of a change of ownership.
Okay, so I mean, certainly in terms of the protest, I feel it's not just you, it's the way the world has been because of COVID, but you've had the rug pulled out from under your feet, and I at the moment I still see pictures obviously popping up. So there is still some presence outside the stadium on match days, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to continue. You're going to continue to do that as well as the survey, obviously.
Mm-hmm. There is, yeah, that's correct. So, so we will continue with aim number one, if you like, and aim number two indefinitely until we're told either stop trying to achieve that by our members or we've achieved it. And so aim number one, if you like, around trying to get independent dialogue, if we achieve it, fantastic, we can tick that off and we can move on to something different. But aim number two was that we were asked to adopt the position of GSB out, if you like, and join the GSB out movement and support the GSB out movement. And we will continue to push that movement and that kind of ideology of having new owners until either new owners come along or we are instructed to stop doing that.
Okay, it's fine. So in the meantime, assuming as I do that we've got the owners that we have, and we're sort of stuck with them for the moment, which is, it's then advantageous for you to get this new committee, which you're hopeful, as you've just alluded to, that the club will basically liaise with you, and they will have to accept that this is the biggest body of West Ham fans. I think probably historically an unprecedented number. It's not just the biggest supporters group or coalition or whatever you want to call yourselves. It's probably the biggest ever. Would that be fair?
It is, and the FSA have also said that it is comparatively big as well when you look at other groups across the country. Now, I do have to throw a caveat in there, and this is a caveat that we're fully aware of when we claim our membership numbers, right? Let's be frank. People wouldn't have joined up if we weren't protesting. Okay, yeah. And I think part of our challenge as a group is that it's very easy to bring people together when there is a common disregard or a common issue that that kind of everybody feels hard done by over something. That's often when people come together.
So people are often protesting about different things, I found.
Yes, yeah. But I think in general in life, it's easier to galvanize support for a destructive cause than it is to galvanize support for a constructive cause. You know, if you tell people that I don't know, something has upset a group of people, let's all go and riot and destruct this whole thing because we're really upset with it. That galvanizes people, and that's a inverted commas easy position to be in, to destruct something. And you know, that's what I mean about being frank. We are in this position where we have so many members because we took a position, and you could call it a negative position, you could call it a destructive position. We see it a bit more as a positive position in terms of trying to bring in new ownership. But, you know, a lot of us have come together because of a feeling of solidarity, camaraderie, and negativity towards the ownership. So whilst, yes, we do have a big membership and that puts us in a strong position, I think we have to remember that a lot of that is due to the fact that we took a negative stance that chimed with a lot of our supporters.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair, and that's honest. I mean, I see your role. It's almost twofold now, and I just want to get into the detail of what you want to ask people in just a second, and I want to also touch on what have your membership been asking you. I speak about it in a detached way because I try to sort of almost play devil's advocate here a little bit. Although the people that obviously watch my videos regularly all know that I at least support the cause. I think the first thing that when I look at Hammers United, the first thing that I think, the first thing I think is hope Paul gets his season ticket back one day. After I've finished thinking that, I think you've got to be in a position that when new owners come in, that actually, and the boys, the other boys in Hammers United know this because I've told them, I think that you have to be in such a position that they can do nothing but approach you. In fact, it would be totally the wrong thing to do to go and buy West Ham United and not consult you. And with that being in mind, that's really important that you are an open committee and that you are an open fan base. You're an open supporters association. That's why it's important that you're going to find out from your membership exactly what they want. So that's the first thing. I think you need to be there for when it happens, when the big day happens. I think in the meantime, you have to have a pragmatic look about you and a pragmatic way of acting. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. This is clearly what you're doing, but I do think it needs to be sometimes pointed out to people because I do think there are people that have you protesting every day of the week, but with the pitchforks out, and you can't, and you'd probably end up getting yourself in trouble at the moment because to do so would actually be illegal. So I think it's important that you keep your stance, which is the membership have said they want the owners to leave, but you also have to be realists in as much as they've not left at the moment and they're sitting in their positions. So what are you going to do at the moment to make things better? So with that in mind, forget all the out stuff, because I'm sure that's the main thing, the main messages you have. Get this lot out. Once you've got past that, what are the sort of things that your membership are asking you?
This is the second level that we want to try and tap into with the survey. So Going back to, I think, the first question you asked, where you said, is this survey designed to find out what our members would like us to address next week, next month? Partially, yes, it is. But it's more designed around trying to examine the bigger picture. And so where we have suffered on some elements of our work through COVID, as anyone has, that change in dynamic and the change in the way that we've worked has also given us a chance to think long term, and to try and step back and to try and look at the bigger picture. So what I mean by that is, football clubs seem to go through an endless cycle of hope when a new owner arrives, and then despair when it doesn't work out, turning to anger, turning to animosity, and essentially owners end up at odds with supporters. I mean, we've seen it a number of times at West Ham, and you've only got to look at any other club in the country, and the chances are, if they're not at odds with their owners right now, they were recently, or they were with the owners before that. So bigger picture, where we're trying to go with this survey, is to try to address the disconnect that always seems to appear. So I guess a good starting point would be for me to step back a little bit and say, how do we think as a group we could go about addressing that disconnect that always seems to appear between supporters and owners? So I guess the first thing to do is to try and understand, why does it appear? My interpretation of that is because if a disconnect inevitably appears, there must be a breakdown in communication. One person must be trying to achieve something that the other person doesn't quite want, or the person who's trying to achieve it, it has what the people want hasn't been clearly communicated to them. So somewhere along the line, if there is a breakdown, it's probably down to communication. And I think that's because there's an easy assumption to make by an owner about football fans. And there's probably an assumption that football fans make about themselves that they don't always realise they've made.
What are those two assumptions?
And that assumption, I think, is the same thing. I think that assumption is owning a football club, running a football club, pleasing supporters is about getting good results on the pitch. And I think the reason that owners make those assumptions is that at first, if they come in and do well, and the results are there on the pitch, they do receive positive feedback for that. So naturally, as an owner, you would think to yourself, look, this is going well. People seem to be happy. We've had a few wins. Manager's doing well. This must be what my job is all about. So as long as I concentrate on getting good results on the pitch, I shouldn't go too far wrong with this club. But I also think, as a football fan, when you first get into football, that's what it is about for you. And always, on some level, that's what it is about. So when you're a kid and you first get into football, all you want is for your team to win. Nothing other than your team winning, it matters at all. And perhaps if you're relatively new to football as an adult, say you're just watching from home and you don't go to games, without making a sweeping judgment on those people, but perhaps it remains that way for some people as an adult. But what I think, and what the committee have started to discuss, is that when you form a connection to a club, and when you start going to games, and when you start experiencing that sharing of emotions with other people who go to games, and the ritual of going, and the experience, the kind of celebrating together, the commiserating together, the journey, the routine, what happens is you build up a whole other side of football that becomes important to you. And I think what we've got to do as supporters is we've got to really clearly express to any potential owners, yes, of course, West Ham is about results. Of course, we want you to win on the pitch. But if we only long for that, we end up in an endless cycle of, I'm quite happy today. I'm not so happy this week. I'm quite happy this week. I'm not so happy. Or I've been happy for 5 years. I've been grumpy for 5 years. And you end up in that endless cycle. So I think what we need to make really clear is what, at the minute, I don't believe we can define. And Paul calls it something special. Whenever he talks about it, he says, there's something special at West Ham. And what we need to make very clear to any new owners is, what is that? What is that other thing about supporting a football club that rides alongside getting good results?
Well, that sounds like, I mean, it makes perfect sense. But that sounds like a very open question to be asking. So that, I mean, that's not a box ticking yes or no answer. You're asking for opinions there. What makes West Ham? You're going to ask you have to collate a lot of stuff, mate. So that's. I mean, that's the first thing on there. I just think the other thing that struck me with what you're saying, I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. This sort of fluid, organic way that you look for results and you start going and when you start going with your mates or going with your family, then other things become important. The bus journey there, the experience when you're there, the seat, the burger, the everything. But I do think primarily, obviously, you're dealing with match day going fans, which obviously that is your focus as the supporters association, right? I take that is right, yeah.
It's down to whoever our members are, mate. But I mean, I would assume that most people who have the inclination to get involved in a group like Hammers United are probably people who spend their time and money going to the game as well.
Yeah, see, we've got a lot of supporters that watch this channel from overseas, and I mean, a lot of them were from, we're local, we're East Londoners or whatever, and then went overseas. And what I find I always want to do, and it's why I ask dumb questions sometimes and try and break it down, is I also feel the need to just try and convey to the people who are watching in Canada or Australia or whatever the case may be, why it's a problem and why this is important, because I do think for a lot of those people as well, they may well tune in and they may well look and say, well done, the team are doing all right at the moment, Moyes is doing well. And I do think I think that feeds into what you were saying initially, which is the owners measure their success on results. And I think they would be looking. It's something I hate, by the way. You're not whinging about the stadium anymore, are you? Now we're winning. Well, hold on. No, thank you. I'm whinging all the time. Just give me some credit. Give me some credit for that. I am permanently grumpy on the stadium issue. Thank you very much. So I do think that's obviously it's important. I'd like to get the message out to those, just to explain, what's going on. What you mentioned about there being, maybe I misread it, almost 2 tiers or 3 tiers in terms of the questions you're asking. So just talk us a little bit through that, please, mate.
Okay, so we have two levels really that we're hoping to extract from the questions that we're asking. So it's not necessarily that people who complete the survey would notice tiers within the survey, but what we're hoping to bring out from it is data that can allow us to then use it on one level and use it on a second level. So what I mean by that is, we are hoping that we can pick out specifics. So some of the questions are about specifics. So for example, there may be a question in there that asks you about the stewarding at the ground. Let's just take one example. Now, if that comes out as a specific that a lot of people feel needs addressing, that's a specific that we can take forward on a specific level. But each of our specifics, what we've pre-planned almost, is that we've divided those specifics into categories that we're hoping we can build principles from. Because if you can't address a specific, and a lot of the time if you get caught up in addressing the specifics, what you miss is the principle that sits behind them. So for example, if everyone on the survey is saying that they would like to see more local sellers at the ground, they don't want to see the branded beer tents outside the ground, they're not happy with the prices inside the ground, they want a standing section in the ground. Let's say a lot of the comments are about, we'll call it match day experience. Then what we have to do as a group is extract that data and say, look, pull these things together. What is the principle behind this? And we're very careful to call it principle, not value, because we think by naming it as a value, it gets lost. So if you give it a short phrase and you call it match day experience, in a sense, that's a value. So what we're looking to do with the data is write a detailed principle whereby, let's say you couldn't fix the stewarding or you couldn't get a local seller at the ground. How could you address the detailed principle that we've written that is important to people on a match day? How could you address that? What way could you look for to match people's expectations underneath that particular principle. So part of what we're doing in this survey is almost ratifying and validating our own thinking around some principles that we've sketched out, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to you speak, and I think you'll do well because you are. It's clearly a well thought out procedure, well thought out plan. When I'm listening to you speaking now, I got it in my brain. It's vitally important that when you get the results from this survey and when you collate everything that's been that people have said, and you then go and report that back to the club, which obviously you need to have your committee agreed for that to happen, and for the new construction of the whatever guise it will be in the new supporters association. You can then hand them that evidence, if you want, for want of a better word, that feedback, and say, this is what we want, this is what we've been instructed to do. I think it's so important that the stadium arena, whatever meeting that is, because there's certain things like Delaware North are popping into my mind. For those of you that don't know, Delaware North are the company with the catering contracts, and when you have things like local sellers and important things that give us that something special that Paul refers to, and our heritage and our culture. I've always thought the popcorn was symbolic rather than a hatred of popcorn, which popcorn's bloody nasty stuff, by the way. It's cardboard. Why anyone would eat popcorn, I don't know. But I would defend anyone's right to sell popcorn. Don't get me wrong, or eat it.
I think the popcorn's a very good example, mate, and I'm hoping I'm preempting you in the right way here. You're not about to say that all West Ham fans hate popcorn, are you?
No, I'm not. And to be honest with you, if you were to go to football and you had your son with you, right, or your daughter, and they turned around and said, "Daddy, can I have some popcorn?" Don't you dare! You'd be a terrible father, really. Imagine getting home to your wife. Oh, did you have a nice time? No, Daddy didn't buy me any popcorn.
You're reporting. Can you believe what my son asked for today? The kid likes popcorn.
Absolutely. He made me drink Foster's instead. Yeah, So I think you have that. The point is that the Delaware North have this catering contract, and so I think it's really important that these people are present, because otherwise you're going to be hit with a brick wall of, we can't do that because the stadium have ownership of that. We can't do that because of the contract. They have to make room. There has to be wriggle room for these things to be incorporated, and I think the weight of so many fans' voices, and this is why it's important that it's not just you have a survey, not that you just have 17. It's all very well having 17,000 members if 200 fill in the survey.
Yeah. And it is open. It is open to everyone as well, mate. It's open, so it's going to be open to all West Ham fans, and that was an issue that the committee took a bit of time to discuss and decide on. But we felt we've got an opportunity here. If we're talking specifics, of course, we'd like to hear from our members, and we can extract the data and we can look at what members have said. But, if we're talking principles, and, you can use the popcorn as a nice analogy to talk, to get people to understand what we mean by that. So going in and saying, look, everyone hates the popcorn, stop selling it, is a specific that you could go in and demand overnight. But then to understand where does that fit and why are people so annoyed at popcorn being sold at a football match is about the principle of what
it's the symbolism. And popcorn represents what's happened to our club. Basically, it does.
Exactly. And then it's about those principles are about saying, look, these don't come from Hammers United members. These come from the widest possible reach that we could get to with a survey. It was supported by, Claret and Hugh have said they're going to host it on their site, which means it's hopefully going to go, beyond our usual reach. And X has had me on the podcast saying that he's going to support and push it as well. And so from the principle side of things, if they can be designed and really ratified and kind of verified by as many West Ham fans as possible, what you get then is a sense of, why are these things important? And once you know why they're important, you can look at kind of planning for the future and saying, right, so when we make decisions, what do we bring them back to? When we make decisions in the future about what do we sell, let's check it against this principle. And that goes back to your point about new owners and us trying to be ready for them. This is kind of us trying to be polished and ready to say, look, here's Hammers United, here's the work that we've done with the whole fan base, here's a set of principles that we think if you were to work with us on these 6 things, 8 things, whatever they might be, and you put this work in away from the football, you know, to do with our heritage or the match day experience or our philosophy, you know, of style of play, or to do with our outreach in the community or whatever it might be. If you work with us on these 6 things, you will have a chance at being a successful owner, no matter what happens on the pitch.
Yeah, I think this is exactly, and something, you know, that we spoke about just before we went. I pressed the record button basically, which is why I think it's so important. And I gave you the example of a time I had a ticketing issue, and I phoned up and in all honesty, you know, there's no way to say it without sounding pompous or whatever or arrogant. It was a case of, because I was Hammer's chat, I got through to somebody. Oh, sorry, Gonzo. Yeah, we'll sort out your ticket, mate, and all everything. You know, and it was that. And I said this to you. My problem with that is, whilst it was very nice and lovely people working in the ticket department at the club and stuff like that, and support liaisons, and, you know, really good people. I did, and I said at the time, I'm not sure that John from Romford with 15 Facebook friends would have got the same treatment, and that's why a supporters group is vitally important, because it gives people a voice that don't have a voice. It's and an opinion, and it allows, and this is why it's so important that you are open, and you are, and I'm praising you. I'm not doing anything other than that. It's really important that you are open, and you are basically saying, look, you guys steer us, you guide us, you tell us where you want to go. And I know this. I've spoken to you privately, I've spoken to Paul privately, and Tross privately, and I know that when you say, you're not just saying it for the camera, that we're honoured to be put in this position. I know you are. I know you feel an obligation, and I know that you probably can't believe the position that you're in now, but you are in that position.
I'll just say one thing on what you said there, mate, about I think what you said is great, and I agree with that in terms of the owners should be guided by a supporters group. I think the problem that still exists in football, and a lot of people would say, is, well, why? Why would they want to be guided by a supporters group when ultimately they can earn massive money, and the supporters will come back time and time again without them being guided by a supporters group? So I think it's also important to acknowledge, and this is something that you know, we have to make clear, I believe, to any new owners, is that it actually also benefits them. Now, what I mean by that is, if you're taking, and we have to be honest here, and we have to be realistic. Whoever it is that takes over West Ham will do so as a business interest. They won't do so because they have the same emotional connection to the club as somebody like me or you. They will not be looking at it from the same perspective as us. So what we have to do is we have to get them to understand it will be beneficial for your business interest if you take a little bit of our perspective on board. So what I mean by that is, if they're saying, well, we want to build a brand, we want to build a global brand, we want to make money from this, we need to be responding and saying, well, actually, we can help you with that brand, because your brand will be stronger if your brand is championed by your customers, and if your brand shows a really strong relationship with your customers. So people will say, well, look, owners won't care. They won't want to build on these principles. They won't want to work with you on them. And so to that, I would say, well, get them to understand that if they do work with us, even if it's only for earning money in the long run, if they can be seen as owners who work with supporters and who keep their customers happy, and who want to build a relationship with their customers and do things for their customers, it strengthens their brand. And what we need is more owners and more football clubs to understand that brands can be built on your connection with your supporters. And I always use the example of Dortmund, because whenever I say Dortmund, what comes into my mind is supporters.
And loads of them, all dressed in a shirt, a big wall.
Absolutely. And, you know, I hate to say it, but even Liverpool as well. Liverpool, you know, Liverpool trade a lot of the time on the atmosphere on European nights, the flags in the Kop, the scarf,
and a great theme tune as well. You'll never walk alone, and the Scousers. Well, we've got all that.
Mm-hmm.
We've got that at West Ham. We absolutely do. We got an anthem. We've got a heritage.
In the cold light of day, yes, our owners will be business people, but they should act like good business people, and they can trade. They can trade off the brand that they can build up if they genuinely give some consideration to their customers, instead of just assuming that no matter what they do, people will just keep coming back and spending their money.
Well, I mean, this is it. Just before we finish up, I want to ask you a couple more questions about the survey. But everything you're saying there about the building of the brand, and it's had they been held to account a little bit more at the start, had they been more transparent, had there have been a better, and I don't mean to insult anyone, but let's say a supporters association that carried more weight. Let's put it that way. At the point where we were moving, had everybody have felt that they'd have been asked about the move and notified about what it would really be like, then maybe they wouldn't have acted in haste and in the way that they would. And maybe things that anger people, like London on the badge.
I was going to say, I can see the badge in the background there, and it's so simple.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But you'd be told straight away, oh, no, you don't do that, because well, what does London on the badge look like? Well, London on the badge looks like a cheap ploy to try and make us more appealing globally. And I think what annoys, well, I can speak for myself, so what I do is speak for myself. What annoyed me about that, I think it's so transparent, but you almost try and make it take us for fools. We have to be fools. It's just admit it. Just come out and say, yeah, actually, to be fair, we did do that, because the look of that global branding, the visualization of it, is London on the badge. The taste of that global branding is the taste of popcorn, and it all feeds in together, and it all becomes one, and that's why it's symbolic. And I just think it's so important, as you make the point there. You make a great point. It's actually advantageous for them. It's helpful for them, because they don't make these stupid mistakes. Then they look better as a result, because all they do. How can you even start to fail when what you're doing is you're conversing with West Ham fans who have the heart of the club as their main motivation, which is basically everything, and they just know it's a sense of right or wrong, which you don't necessarily have when you were trying to build a financial brand, and a lot of it is right and wrong and awful.
You've got a ready-made culture and a brand that exists for you. If you want to dig it out and you want to find out about it, it's all there. The supporters will talk about it for hours, and they will tell you exactly what it needs to be. All you've got to do is embrace it and bring those people on board, rather than think, right, okay, we can fix this. We can make something new here. We could bring new people in. You don't have ready-made brands and culture and history and tradition in a inverted commas normal business. You have all of that with a football club, and all you've got to do to be more successful as an owner is bring that with you and bring that out.
Well, I think in terms of Liverpool, when Henry came in, first of all, he had a head start because he was following on from Gix and Hicks. You know what I mean? Those two. Anyway, Stadler and Waldorf, right? He was following on from those two. But he didn't rock up and say, he said, I'm Benway Group, this is what we're going to do. He didn't rock up and say, oh, yeah, I've got the Liver Birds tattooed on my arse. I love Brookside and all the rest of it. My granddad was a docker. He didn't come out with all that. Yeah, I used to swim the Mersey as a kid. He didn't give it all of that. And you wouldn't, and in many respects, our lot did. I don't doubt that David Gold lived where he lived, but our lot very much rocked up. Oh, cut me open and I bleed liquor and pie and mash and and all that. They did give it that one, and you don't need to. You can approach it with honesty and just say, what can we do for you? And he has. I do think Liverpool have retained that heritage, even the way they did the stand, and the way they dealt with the houses and the surrounding area.
Yeah, it's a frank admission needed from owners and supporters. I think both of them need to say, look, the game is monetized, the game is commercialized. Supporters need to accept that when owners make these decisions, it may be because they're trying to make more money, but at least you get the benefit. I use the example of McDonald's. They brought in comfy chairs because they wanted to make more money. However, the customer still gets the benefit of the comfy chair. So if you like, everything will always be a fake gesture because it's monetized and it's commercialized. However, the gesture, the work, the sentiment, everything is actually still there. And so the supporters will benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Let's just nail down the survey now. Any, three things. Anything else you want to say about the survey? When's it happening, and how do people participate?
No, the most important thing about the survey, really, mate, is what we've discussed all night. And I know we've gone off on various tangents that people would think are not specifically related to the survey. But we thought as a group, and this is the reason why we didn't launch it immediately. We've had a week or so building up to it. Is we just wanted people to listen into our kind of long-term aim and direction, to make them think, actually, do you know what, this survey might be worth completing. Perhaps I won't dig too much into why they're asking this or why they're asking that, or perhaps I won't think to myself, oh, it's another survey, or perhaps I will set aside, it's a 6-minute survey. Perhaps I will set aside 6 minutes of my time. And so really about the survey itself, everything we've talked about tonight, about the bigger picture, about us trying to design some principles, about us trying to break that cycle of falling out with owners, and about us trying to represent our members in the short term, those are the things that I just really hope that people can keep in their mind when they're making the decision about whether or not they take it. It launches on Sunday, so a link will go up on our website on Sunday. It will be hosted by the FSA on SurveyMonkey, and it will stay live for 2 weeks. So it launches on the 13th, closes on the 27th. So if you're bored over Christmas, you've got nothing to do on Boxing Day, you can always open your laptop up and take the survey on Boxing Day. What was your last question, mate?
No, yes, that was it. When's it live? Where can we find? Yeah, that was it, mate. Yeah, and where can we find it? Yeah, so that's fine. So it's on hammersunited.com.
It is. Yeah, it will be on hammersunited.com, and we'll put that link round Twitter, and various influencers have promised to help us make sure that everyone
will help you. Everyone will help you, because it's all West Ham fans, and anyone that does podcasts or videos or anything else is West Ham fan. We'll run it on here, obviously. We'll cover it extensively, and people watching this video, you don't have to worry about the link below. But if you're going to go and click on hammersunited.com, do it, because there's a load of other good stuff on there anyway. I'll let you know closer to the time, and we'll make sure everyone heads over there and completes this survey, because as I said, I think the more people do it, the more influence it gives you, and you wield, I just know you guys, you wield that influence responsibly and with care, that you are representing a load of people, and I think that's it, and I think you do a wonderful job. Any final words you make, anything that you wanted to say that perhaps we haven't covered?
No, I think you touched on it there, mate, with people, and this is really how we hope people perceive us. What we're trying to say is, hopefully people will trust us that we're doing this for the right reasons. We've thoroughly thought through the questions, and that we want to go in a direction that genuinely tries to improve things for all West Ham supporters. And it really is no more complex and no simpler than that. And we just, we just hope, like you say, that people see us for that. Think that we're credible, trust us, and we'll say, yeah, why not? I'll spend a few minutes completing that survey and help them out.
Well, mate, listen, thanks for joining us. Credibility is not something you're going to have to worry about at all, honestly. You all carry yourselves so well. I think it's brilliant. I think you're a credit to the fans. I think you're a credit to your organisation. Anyway, I'm going to stop saying nice things now, because I've got to be grumpy about the stadium and stuff like that. I've got to get back into character.
Well, thank you very much for having us, mate. Whenever people give us the opportunity to come on, and reach out to West Ham fans, we really appreciate that.
You're very, very welcome. Right, I'm off. Andy's off. We're going to go and eat some claret and blue popcorn, probably, of course, higher mash flavour.